About 90 minutes after the president first announced that Sarah Sanders would be leaving her job in the administration, I was up in her office at the White House, and I asked if she regretted holding so few briefings in her time as press secretary. No regrets. She said no apologies. And like her boss, no backing down from that. But her stepping down means in just about 2 weeks, her job will be open if President Trump wants to fill it.
I have a lot of people that want it, and there are a lot of great people, and it's sometimes you have so many that it makes it more difficult. But we have some great. But Sarah was fantastic, and she is fantastic, and she's going to have a tremendous future. She's been with me 3.5 years, close to 4 years, and she has been a warrior in a sense.
I am joined now by former Trump White House press secretary and communications director Sean Spicer, who is now the senior advisor for the America First Action PAC. Sean, you used to hold this job. You have an interesting perspective on this, which is why we're having you on the show. So let me start here. One of the defining concepts of Sanders' time as press secretary is the death of the daily briefing. Was that a mistake?
I don't think so. I think there's a utility in the briefing because I think that people should see their government in action. But I don't know that it needs to be daily, and I think you would admit that Sarah herself interacts with the press on a rather daily basis. You just talked about being in her office yesterday. She's often on the driveway doing what they call a gaggle with the media. So it might not take place in the briefing room, but she's clearly, her and her staff are interacting with the media on a fairly regular basis throughout the day. Secondly, I think I've said this all along. The job of a spokesperson is to speak in the absence of the principal, in this case, the president. There's no question that this president engages on a very regular basis with the press corps, sometimes in the pool sprays on his way to Marine One, sometimes on the plane, sometimes in the Roosevelt room or the cabinet room. And so the question really comes down to, is the press getting the access they need on behalf of the stories they're writing, the things that they want to communicate to the American people? And by and large, I think you've got to answer that question, yes.
The president has always been doing that, though, Sean. He's always held longer, extended pool sprays and answered questions to reporters in the Oval Office since he's been in office. And yet, when you were press secretary, you still believed in the value, it seemed, of a daily briefing, regardless of what was said at the podium. You still held them. So what changed? Why do you feel differently now?
Well, because, one, I think there was no question the president's clearly engaging more now than he was during my tenure. Second, I mean, look, Hallie, you were there. Those briefings became a food fest. And I don't think that they served the American people well. I don't think they served well, and I don't think they were a great use of the press staff's time. The press staff is there to engage with the folks in the media, to give them the information on policy, personnel, and events, and a lot of time is spent just getting ready for that briefing. That being said, let me be very clear. I think the briefing does serve a utility. Does it need to occur every day? No. Should there be regular briefings? Sure. I think the question comes down to, do they need to be daily? Is the staff available to folks in the media like yourself and your colleagues? The answer has always been yes. And I think that's what's important, that the press has access to information and government officials.
I think a lot of members of the White House press corps would agree there is value to a regular, formal daily briefing when the information coming from the podium is true. So let me ask you this. Sarah Sanders has acknowledged she did not always tell the truth to reporters. So let me ask you, do you regret setting that precedent for dishonesty when you were at the podium?
No. I was every day.
No,
went there
none, not at all? None of the things that you said that weren't true, you regret none of them?
No, I didn't say that. You said you regret setting the precedent. Did I make mistakes, Hallie? Of course I did. And when I did, I tried my best to make up for those. I've said that there were times when I should have done a better job. There are times when I hope to God that you look back on some of your shows or some of your questions and say, wow, I wasn't the best reporter I could have been. I clearly made mistakes. But do I think I ever engaged in anything that wasn't the best that I could do at the time? No.
You were the boss at the time when Sarah Sanders was coming up. You hired her. You brought her into the White House. You had her in your press shop. You were you or not setting a precedent for the tone and the behavior that a press secretary should hold when you held that role?
In some cases, I think. I mean, that's a pretty loaded question. There were days that I look back and I, for lack of a better word, took the bait and think I could have been a better person, a better communicator, and represented the president better, unequivocally. But every day we would talk about what we could have done as a team better, what I could have done. And I hope that I set an example that said that we are there on behalf of the American people to represent this administration and to do the best job that we can every day. Did we make mistakes? Yeah. Look, I got to be honest. To make that kind of a loaded thing, that's a pretty loaded charge to make, Hallie. I admit that I made mistakes. I think we all do. I'm man enough to sit here and say to you, I did make them. I hope I can be a better person. I learned from things that I did. I, in many cases, went to people and said, hey, I got this wrong. I want to set the record straight. But to suggest in any way that I set a precedent is pretty far of a stretch.
Do you think the president even needs a press secretary, knowing this president, knowing how he is his own, as you know, communicator? Do you think he will or should fill this role ultimately?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those people who ask that question, I think they exhibit a lack of understanding of the role. There is plenty of time when the press secretary is on camera or engaging in interviews. But you and your colleagues know very well that there's a lot of logistical things that go on. There's a lot of information flow, access, and coordination with other government officials that take place, whether it's the White House or throughout the administration. So to suggest that the press secretary's only job is to get up on camera and speak is a pretty naive view of the role.
Yeah, sure. That's not my suggestion. It's a fair question, given that this president likes to set his own message, and that's a big part, I think you would agree, of the press secretary's job. Sean Spicer, would you take the job if the president asked you? Would you go back?
Oh, would I go back? Oh, no. No.
Okay.
No,
right.
I've told the president many times I was honored to do it, but I'm much more happy and relaxed and less stressful now.
Senior advisor to the America First PAC and former press secretary Sean Spicer, thank you. Still ahead.